I'm Connie Schultz, and I'm reading my very first column that I wrote for The Plain Dealer. It's in the collection of my first book titled Life Happens and Other Unavoidable Truths. And I wrote this column after my editor said I had to introduce myself to readers, which felt a little silly since I'd already been at The Plain Dealer for 8 years. So instead of the usual blah, 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 I wrote about my father's lunch pail. A promise in a lunch pail. I want Dad's lunch pail. I imagine it on my desk, right next to my computer, holding all my pens, notebooks, and stick-and pads. A reminder of a promise made and a promise kept. So I pester him. Have you found it yet? I don't even know if I have it anymore, he told me. I may have thrown it out when I left the plant. Please, no. My father does not understand why his lunch pail matters to me, probably because he never thought his job mattered either. For 36 years, my dad worked in maintenance for the Cleveland Electric Illuminating Company. He was 20, already married and the father of 2-month-old me, when he walked through the doors of the power plant carrying a union card and a brand new black metal lunch pail. He never replaced it. By the time he retired, there were holes in the bottom corners where metal nubs used to be. That lunch pail is my most enduring childhood memory of life with Dad, who was big and burly and not much for small talk or late-night tucks into bed. Most evenings, it lay open on the kitchen counter until my mother filled the thermos with milk and made 4 sandwiches wrapped in wax paper. Sometimes she drew a funny picture on his paper napkin or scribbled a little note. "I love you," she would write in her loopy backhand, "meatloaf for dinner." When I was little, I didn't understand what Dad did for a living. His job was simply the thing that kept him away. He worked a lot of overtime, and when he came home on time, he had little to say about his day. Little good, anyway. "You could teach a monkey to do what I do," he said some evenings, to no one in particular, staring straight ahead as he nursed his Strohs. At 6'1", 220 pounds, my father was a giant to me, and I could not bear to imagine him any other way. I would scurry off, unwilling to meet his gaze. Once I started working for a living, I occasionally prodded my father to tell me about his work. I wanted the reality check, the reminder that no matter how hard I thought I was working, I would never come close to the hard labor he knew. "What did you do there?" I would ask. "Tell me about the equipment you used. Who did you talk to all day long?" He was never interested in the conversation. "It was a job, Connie," he'd say, "not a career." That's probably why he can't understand why I want his lunch pail, but he's promised to keep looking for it. To Dad, it is a daily reminder of the job he hated. To me, it is an enduring symbol of the promise he made to his 4 young children. "You kids are never going to carry one of these to work," he'd tell us, over and over. "You kids are going to college." He made good on his promise. I am the oldest, so I was the first to go. Whenever I came home for a weekend, my dad would take me with him to run errands, and inevitably, we'd end up at one of his favorite taverns. His buddies always said the same thing when we walked through the door. "Here comes the college kid." Dad would beam. "Yup, she's never going to carry a lunch pail, by God." A dozen glasses would rise in the air. My story is as old as the bricks under Cleveland's earliest streets. I am the child of working-class parents determined they would be the last of their kind. And there was that same unspoken deal in thousands of households. "We'll send you kids away, but don't you ever forget where you came from." As if we could. I went to college, and so the heaviest piece of equipment I have to lift is a laptop. I became a writer. That is what I do. My home is now in a neighborhood where the railroad tracks groan under the weight of the commuter train instead of the freight trains of my childhood. That is where I live. But I am also the girl whose father carried a lunch pail for 36 years. And that is who I am.